had an interaction with Dan Natterman earlier today on Twitter, which I feel bad. I like Dan Natterman. I mean, I think he's
good comic.
He's a very funny comic, and he's a good guy. He's a smart guy. But I didn't mean to put such a ratio on him this morning, but goddamn, he doesn't have a lot of Twitter followers, and he started replying to me, and he was just saying dumb shit. But it kind of reminded me of this, because what people will say almost in response to this is they'll go, oh, so they'll say, so you're saying that nobody has ever dog whistled before? Like nobody's ever made a comment that was like kind of intended to maybe let racists know I'm on your side. And it's like, no, that's not the point. But the point is that you can't just accuse people of doing that without having any reason to suspect that they are actually doing that. You know what I'm saying? Like if there's no evidence that this is a dog whistle, it's so obviously much more likely that he just happened to have the numbers 14 and 88 in a tweet and didn't mean anything to that. So anyway, the interaction that I had with Natterman kind of reminded me of it. But so I had tweeted, there was something, some article that came out that I saw about like the CDC still recommending that children get the COVID vaccine, something like that. And so
annually, we got to make sure people get as many mRNAs as possible.
Maybe it was something where they said it's COVID should going forward be a yearly
hey, you can still increase your antibodies. Dave, are you trying to say it's not important for people to have increased antibodies?
Right. So anyway, I think it was someone from the CDC said that going forward for kids, it should be like a yearly flu shot and a yearly COVID shot. I believe that. And so I just tweeted just a very, blanket. I just said, over my dead body, will either of my two children ever get the COVID jab? Just a blank statement. And Dan Natterman responded to me. And he said, here, let me get it so I can do it justice, not misrepresent anything that happened. So he said that his response was, if the CDC recommends the vax for kids, I would do it. Because A, I don't believe the government is purposely trying to harm children for some nefarious purpose. And B, scientists are a lot smarter than me, as evidenced by the fact that my GPS works. Which, so all right. So anyway, I responded, I was like, Jesus, Dan, you could have just written appeal to authority or something like that. Now, but now, of course, appealing to authority is a logical fallacy. Just because an authority says something is right doesn't make it right. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't times where experts get things right. But just because you said, well, the CDC says it, doesn't mean it's correct. And as far as him saying, I don't believe the government is purposely trying to harm children for some nefarious purpose, that's nice that you don't believe that. I don't know that the government is purposely trying to harm children. My belief would be more something along the lines of they don't care if they do. Which is a distinction, okay? It's not that I don't necessarily think like the people who were lying us into the war in Iraq were selling it because they just wanted to kill children, but they were willing to kill children in order to further their goal. Now I could give you a million examples where the government is actually quite willing to kill children. Anyway, Dan said, he responded, like I said, my GPS works, as does my iPhone. And when I get on an airplane, I get to my destination safely every time. And if the pilot says we're diverting because of weather, I don't, quote, do my own research.
Well, you know what didn't work? The vaccine you took. You know who it really doesn't work for? The kids they're putting it into. And you want to hear the science on that? Because it's pretty well documented at this point.
Yeah, well, here. So anyway, I responded back to him and I said, the experts said Saddam had WMDs. I'm not going to do my own research. Experts know things. I mean, my washing machine works. So just kind of mocking this idea that just because he responded with something like where he said like, well, Dave, if you know what the speed of light is, you only know that because an expert figured it out. And again, it's kind of like the same thing with the dog whistle thing. Saying like pointing out an appeal to authority fallacy, saying something is right because the experts say it's right is a fallacious line of reasoning. Now, that does not mean that experts have never figured out anything in the history of anything. It doesn't mean there aren't legitimate experts who have expertise in areas that we do not have, of course. But
also, he's describing market experts.
Yes, that's
and
for sure.
We're really big fans of the free market. And yeah, I guess if everyone can opt to go buy a plane ticket and people can get so good at flying planes that there's the expert at the front of the plane because we all get to freely go buy those tickets, then yeah, that expert's probably an expert. But when the government comes along and they force someone upon us, and they go, this is an expert and you have to listen to the person, and they don't have to actually prove themselves in the market and prove their value and prove that their items are good or that their ideas work, then yeah, then you might as well, any government policy of anything that they ever come out with. I mean, I don't even know why there's Democrats and Republicans arguing amongst each other. Hey, there was an expert. He told me to stay in my house and shut down my business and that it would be better for me to not see my family before they died.
Why are you even trying to make an argument to convince me of something? Like, let the experts in logic figure this out, right? We have people with PhDs in logic. What are you doing here, having a conversation with someone, right? So again, this turns into a thing where it's almost like he's going, oh, so you're saying experts never figured anything out, or you don't ever lean on expert opinions. It's like, no, I lean on expert opinions all the time. I'm a Jew from New York City who owns a huge house. This place would crumble if I didn't just constantly lean on experts. I had this studio built I had electrical work done by an electrician who knows stuff that I don't know. Yes, obviously our whole lives, we defer to people who have specialized in different areas.
By the way, you know what I'm an expert in?
That does not mean that because they say it, they're right. And that, or especially that some governing authority is therefore correct. Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
No, I have an expertise. You know what I'm an expert in, Dave?
What's that?
Knowing when the government's lying to you. So Dan, you can just refer to my expertise on this. Yes. And when the government says that giving your kid an mRNA booster at this point in time is a good idea, they're lying to you.
Well, it's weird how he gets off on this thing of like, well, someone else figured out the speed of light and someone else figured out how an iPhone works and how to fly a plane and all of this other things. And it's like, yeah, but what we started with was saying that you're telling me if the CDC tells me to, which they're telling me to and have been for a long time, tell me to vaccinate my kids, I should vaccinate my kids with the COVID mRNA vaccine. And the issue here is that while Dan and so many other people which is, I don't know if you've heard, Jimmy Dore has this great bit on when people go, do your own research. I saw it in quotes where he's like, I don't do my own research. And Jimmy Dore goes, you know what we used to call that? Reading. It's a long bit. I won't do the whole thing, but it's really, really funny. But it is just like, yeah, by the way, the do your own research thing, which is like what grown men used to call reading, also involves relying on experts. Like, I don't think there's any of us out here who did our own research through COVID. And by the way, me and you did our own research throughout all of COVID. And you know what? Put our track record up against anyone in the corporate press or the government approved expert class, and we trounce them. This is not debatable. We trounce them with our record on what our stance on COVID and the vaccine was compared to theirs. But when we were doing our own research, it's not like I was just my research was well, I'm going to go grab a couple beers and talk to my neighbor about what he thinks. It was reading from all of the experts who were censored out of the conversation. That it still involves looking to experts. It's just like hearing second experts, hearing a second opinion. It's like if a doctor diagnosed something and you went to get a second opinion and they were like, what are you doing? Don't do your own research. Trust the experts. And you're like, but why can't I go hear what this other expert has to say? I know, isn't it interesting that all of these experts are involved in this completely crony money-making scheme, and this expert's outside of that and has a completely different opinion. So again, it's just it's this thing where if you the point I was trying to make that I think is true for the dog whistling and for this, do your own research, trust the experts bullshit, is that it's as soon as you point out that this is an unreasonable standard to have as your standard for determining something, they go, oh, so you're saying it's never once happened? Oh, so you're saying no one's ever dog whistled, or that no expert has ever been right? And you're like, yeah, of course that has happened. But that doesn't mean that your standard can be, therefore, when the experts say something, we must automatically defer to them. Like, no, that's ridiculous. And this is true all across life, right? Like if you, I had to get my hot water heater replaced recently. And what do? I call in the company. They take a look at it. They go, look, this thing's busted. You're going to need a new one. It's going to be a few $1,000s. Like, okay, this is what we have to do. And you go, okay, look, I don't know. I don't know whether there was a quick fix for that or not, but what am I going to do? I don't know about water heaters, and that's what these guys do. So I defer to their expert opinion. However, if they were to say, okay, this is busted, and we're going to need you to write me a check for $100,000 right now, and it'll take 6 months before we can get you another water heater. Right away, I'm going to go, that doesn't seem reasonable to me. I'm going to have to do my own research. I'm going to have to look into what I'm going to call another water heater company. I'm going to see what they tell me they would charge over this, because I've never heard of anyone having to pay $100,000 for a new water heater and it takes 6 months for it to get there, right? So it's not one or the other. It's like, yes, generally speaking, you look to people who have expertise, but when they start saying something that seems a little bit unreasonable, that's when it's if you're not an idiot and you're a grown man, that's when you go, no, actually, I'm going to have to look into this a little bit more. I want to hear what some other experts have to say. And when you tell me that I should be injecting my babies with an experimental mRNA vaccine, even though the experts who are at the forefront of developing mRNA, many of them are telling you not to take it, right? Like, I guess Dr. Malone's not an expert now, according to Dan, I guess. No, then you realize, oh, wait, you're telling me you want them to take this experimental vaccine for something that statistically they have zero risk of negative outcomes from. That doesn't seem reasonable to me. And now I'm going to do my own research, motherfucker, because that's the reasonable thing to do at this point.